Here we are, and welcome to the Viking Access webinar on an introduction to the VFlex control board. My name is Matt Davis. I work in the media department here in the Central Viking office in lovely Irvine, California. I'm going to be your presenter today. Actually, this is our first webinar, the first of what we hope to be many webinars designed to keep you informed of new features and technical information and products that we make here at Viking. As most of you probably know, we're very dedicated to innovation here at Viking, and we want to take that approach to staying connected with you, giving you the information that you need to help you with installations and troubleshooting, and to address some of the questions that you have about our operators. So if you have a question at any point during this presentation, just type it into the chat box there, and we'll hold on to it and answer it in the live Q&A session after the presentation. Today, our topic is the VFlex control board. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's our newest and most innovative control board to date, and it's actually something we're quite proud of here at Viking. There have been a lot of questions from you guys about this board, and we'd like to answer them today, starting with some general ones and then going to your specific questions toward the end of the presentation. First, though, what is the VFlex? Well, basically, the VFlex is the central brain of the gate operator. All the controls, the features, and connections for external devices are there, and it's also designed to get information from the whole system. There are several points in the operator where data is being collected and monitored by the VFlex, the position of the gates, power levels for the battery, external electrical supplies, the state of the motor and the fuses, and just tons of information is monitored and displayed by this board. Now, one thing we wanted to do when designing the VFlex was to make it as easy as possible to decipher. If you look at control boards from other systems, you can see why some people just go bonkers trying to figure out how to use these things. They're basically naked circuit boards. They're not very easy to read. The indicators aren't always marked very clearly. And unless you know the individual board extremely well, it could take you a long time just to figure out what's going on with this thing. Well, we know the installers out there have a tough job, and we wanted to try to make everyone's day a little bit easier. So we designed the VFlex to be a control board where everything is right in front of you as soon as you look at it. Easy to understand controls, clearly marked indicators, and we've even added an LCD to display information and errors in plain English. We wanted it so that just having this control board in your system will save you lots of time. So this is the control board we're going to be talking about today. And we've got some good information lined up for you here. We've gone to the guys in our tech support department, and we've asked them to give us a list of the most common questions they hear about the VFlex when they're on the phone with installers in the field. And we'll be answering those questions here in this presentation. And the first question we have here is, I love the LCD, but it displays a lot of information. What does it all mean? And this is a really good question because the LCD will tend to throw a lot of information at you sometimes. But if you break all of it up into 4 types of messages it will give you, then it becomes a lot easier to understand. And these 4 types of information are system status messages, board settings messages, errors, and multimeter readings, which we're actually going to talk about in more detail in a minute. Now, the first thing, if you have a VFlex board there and you just look at it, the LCD is probably going to be blank. So you might be looking at it thinking, hey, mine's not working. Actually, the normal state of the LCD is to be off to save power and to prolong the life of the display. This is the normal state. So to tell the LCD that you want to look at its information, you need to hit the diagnose button, which is located right next to it. This will wake the LCD up, and then you can scroll through the different messages each time you tap the button. The first 3 categories of information you're going to get are pretty straightforward. The first one, system status messages, I'll tell you what's going on with the gate right now. That's pretty much it. If it's opening, if it's closing, if it's been stopped by an obstruction, if it's holding and waiting to close, pretty much anything that the operator is currently doing with the gate is a system status message. The board settings messages, again, these are really straightforward. These are a lot like the system status messages, but instead of telling you what's currently happening with the gate, they tell you what's currently happening with the control board settings. So if you've set a timer delay for the gate, or you've adjusted the sensitivity of the obstruction sensor or the gate speed or any adjustable feature on the board, really, this is going to tell you how they're currently set. One particular thing we get asked about a lot in the board settings is about the heater. This sometimes throws people for a loop because Viking is the only company that offers a heater built into the unit instead of an external unit, which can use a lot of electricity and be problematic and not to mention expensive. The first thing to know is that the operating temperature range of the VFlex is pretty wide, so you'll only need to turn on the heater if you expect the temperature to drop below 10 degrees Fahrenheit where the operator is sitting. So if you're expecting those kind of temperatures, then it's probably good to turn the heater on. And to do that, all you have to do is you scroll through the LCD messages until you see the heater OPN message. Now, while that message is on the LCD, hold down the stop button, and while you're holding it, push the diagnose button. This will toggle the heater open, on, and off. Now, to make sure that the heater is on continually, scroll to the next option, the heater CLS message, that's heater close, and repeat the same process as before. This will keep the heater on while the gate's open and while the gate's closed, so it'll be continually operating. Now, if you set the heater on, don't worry about it constantly being on, no matter if it's 5 degrees or 100 degrees outside. The heater is actually set to automatically turn on at around 40 degrees Fahrenheit and below. So it's not just going to sit there constantly heating up the machine, even if it's really hot outside. The next information category for the LCD is errors. And as you probably already guessed it, these messages are errors that the VFlex has found somewhere in the system. An important thing to remember here is that if the VFlex does detect an error, the LED by the diagnose button will start to flash to let you know that there's some important information in the LCD that you should look at. Also, you will always be able to tell an error message because all of them always start with the letters ERR. And if you see one, the next step is simply to read it. There are no number codes or anything to look up in a book. The error is printed out on the LCD in English for you. If the AC is too high or the 30 amp fuse is blown, if the battery is too low, the VFlex will simply tell you what's wrong. Now, there is a lot of different error reporting in the VFlex, and so much that we wouldn't have time to cover it all here. So we might save that for its own separate presentation later on. Finally, we have the multimeter readings, and these are a really popular feature on this board. What you have here are 5 different multimeter readings directly from the operator and right to the VFlex. So if you want to say check the battery voltage or the amperage of the motor or other readings important for diagnosing a problem, you don't have to start fiddling with a pocket meter and sticking probes into the machine. They're already right there on the LCD, so you don't have to do that. Now, this is the information that the LCD will give you in a nutshell, and obviously there's much more detail we could go into, but for now, we'll save the detailed course for another presentation later on, and we'll continue on with the questions that we have today. Another popular question they get over in tech support is, could you explain what the LED indicators mean? And LEDs are a good way to check the status of a board. Just at a glance, you can see what the basic status of the operator is. And this is a really good question because while most of the LEDs are really straightforward, there are a few of them that have some interesting side functions that are very helpful to know. Obviously, you have your power, your battery low, and your check motor lights, which they're almost completely self-explanatory. The line of LEDs next to the gate control buttons, that is the radio, UL, reopen, ATG, and C-loop LEDs. These light up to indicate when the board is receiving a signal from an external device that is connected to it. For example, if you had a radio receiver connected to the radio station block to use with a little gate opening button, this LED would light up only when you press the button and the board gets a signal from the receiver to open or close the gate. Now, the magnetic lock LED is, we really get a lot of questions about that one. Some people have noticed that the light is sometimes on even though they don't have a magnetic lock connected. And they call us and say, hey, this silly light is saying I have a magnetic lock and I don't. Actually, this LED only indicates when a signal would be being sent to the magnetic lock if you had one. So even if you don't have a magnetic lock connected, it will still light up when the gate is in anything other than its close limit. Another very interesting one here is the ODS LED. That's the obstruction detector. This light will come on solid if the board registers an obstruction, and it will flash if there's been an overload. Now, the difference between these two is basically an obstruction means that the gate has actually impacted an object and stopped suddenly. And if that happens, the light will stay solid. An overload means that the gate is being slowed down or dragged slower by something that isn't a solid object, and when that happens, the light will flash. And there's actually a third function for the ODS LED where if you see it flashing very quickly, That indicates that a signal from a wireless device has changed one of the settings on the board remotely. And in that case, all you have to do is readjust the setting directly on the board and the LED will go off back to normal status. The timer LED is fairly simple. It comes on when the holding timer is on and counting down. However, it will also start flashing if there's a signal from an outside device that's conflicting with the timer and causing it to reset over and over again. That is an important thing to know. Lastly, open and close limit LEDs. And we're going to go more into these and what they mean in a moment. But there's one condition where these LEDs actually signal a warning, and that's when you see them alternating back and forth. This means the board has no signal coming from the EPS2. And EPS2, that's the connector that gets information from the gate positioning device. So if these two are flashing back and forth, it basically means that the VFlex has no idea where the gate is positioned, and that will need to be fixed. Now, speaking of the open and close limit buttons, a lot of people ask for clarification on how to set the limits and what is the best way to explain this to their customers. And to better understand how the open and close limits work, it's important to know that the VFlex has some pretty sophisticated technology that lets it know what position the gate is in. If it's opening or closing or even stopped halfway, the VFlex knows this. And setting the open and close limit is just telling the VFlex to mark the spot where the gate is now and only move the gate to that point from now on. So to set the limits, follow these steps in order. And as an example, we'll set the open limit. When you first activate the operator, you'll notice the open and close limit LEDs flashing. This is telling you that no limits have been set. So press the open button and move the gate to the position you want to set the limit, and when it gets there, press stop. Now to set the limit, press and hold the open limit button until it stops flashing, and what this does is it tells the VFlex that this is the spot that the gate should be considered open. So when you push the open button, and the gate reaches this place, the VFlex will stop the gate in that same position every time. Setting the close limit is exactly the same. You just want to mark the place where the board will bring the gate to a final closed position. Now, if you mess up and you want to reset the limits, all you have to do is press and hold one of the limit buttons and the LED will start to flash, showing you that the VFlex has forgotten that limit. Then to reset it, just move the gate to the new position you'd like and press and hold the limit button again like before. That's all there is to it. Another question people ask is, what options do I have for powering the gate? And this is a really exciting question, especially for people who like green power. Viking operators, and this is the whole machine, including the VFlex, run on just 24 volts. So already, you're not going to have to throw 1.21 gigawatts at these things to get them to run. Now, the power box that's included with the operator can accept either a 110 or 220 underground power line, or you can simply slide the power box out of the unit and plug it into an ordinary household power outlet and power the operator remotely. And one of my personal favorite options, you can use solar power. You can actually power the entire unit with solar power. We do have our own Viking solar kit that we can supply ourselves, and in practically no time at all, you could have your operator being powered exclusively by the sun without spending even a cent more on electricity. Actually, we've heard of people running our operators from wind generators and lots of other fun things, so there are plenty of power possibilities here. And last question for this particular webinar, and then we'll go to answering your personal questions. I've read that the VFlex is set up for wireless communication, but what does it really do? And this is an area that we're really having fun with here at the Viking offices. First, the VFlex is Bluetooth compatible. Now, what this allows the VFlex to do is communicate with other electronic devices wirelessly. For instance, if you get the Bluetooth master-slave modules, you can run a dual master-slave gate system without running a single wire to the other operator. And something we're really excited about right now, we have officially released Viking Connect for Android, and it will be coming soon for the iPad. Basically, it's an app that literally gives you a virtual VFlex control board on your screen and allows you to control all the features and functions of the board wirelessly. You can set the gate limits, control the gate speed, activate the automatic open features. Anything you can do on the control board, you can do remotely over Bluetooth with Viking Connect. And it's also going to be able to show the current status of all the LEDs and all the information on the LCD. So with Viking Connect, you won't even have to take the cover off the unit anymore to make basic changes or diagnose problems. And that's really going to be a great feature, we think. that is all of the time we have for this presentation on the VFlex control board. Currently, right now, at this very moment, the VFlex is available on our L3, K2, and H10 operators, and it will be implemented on all of our operators, every single one of them, in the near future. I want to thank you for joining us today for this presentation and hope that it's been informative and helpful. We're going to open up to our live Q&A session now and answer some of the questions that you've had watching the presentation. And as always, if you have even further questions or comments, we would love to hear from you here in our Irvine office. You can call us toll free at 800-908-0884, or if you'd like to visit our website for updated specs and information on all of our operators and accessories, you can find that at www.vikingaccess.com.